The heirlooms that sparkled no more asterisk asterisk. Greetings, dear listeners. Before we cross the threshold into this slow-burning tale, of love that gave until its hands bled, a betrayal polished smooth by years of small thefts, and of one woman's final, deliberate act of reclamation, please show this channel some gentle love. A like if stories of quiet, hard-won dignity still move you. A subscription if you want these voices to keep finding their way through the noise of the world to reach you. And in the comments below, tell me, which city, which country, which corner of the earth are you listening from tonight? Seeing your names light up from Karachi to Reykjavik, from Cape Town to Vancouver, always reminds me how universal these silent heartbreaks can be. How many of us carry the same invisible weight? Now, settle in. Breathe deep. Let the room grow quiet enough that you can hear your own pulse. My name is Eleanor Mayfield. I turned 72 last April, though the arithmetic feels dishonest. Some mornings I wake up 35 inside my ribcage, still hopeful, still foolishly trusting, still capable of believing that love is measured by how much one is willing to sacrifice. Other mornings I wake up 95 behind the eyes, tired in a way that no amount of sleep can touch, carrying the memory of every year I spent trying to keep someone else warm while my own shoulders froze. For 47 years I lived in the same narrow Victorian row house on Maplewood Street in Oak Park, Illinois. Number 417. Third from the corner. The one with the crooked wrought iron fence my grandfather never finished painting before the war took him. My grandmother Lillian purchased it outright in the spring of 1946 with the Navy life insurance check that arrived 6 months after the telegram saying her husband would not be coming home from the Pacific. She paid cash. She never trusted banks after the Depression. She never trusted much of anything after the telegram. The house was never grand. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen so small you had to step sideways to open the oven. But it smelled like safety, lemon oil on the oak banister, old books in the glass-fronted secretary, the faint ghost of rosewater that drifted down the upstairs hallway long after my grandmother stopped dabbing it behind her ears. It was small enough to feel intimate, large enough to hold several generations of grief and joy without anyone feeling crowded. And in the front bedroom, on the cherry dresser that had belonged to my great-grandmother Beatrice, sat the jewelry box. Mahogany, brass inlay in a delicate Art Nouveau pattern of morning glories, a hairline crack running diagonally across the lid from the afternoon in 1963 when my mother, usually so composed, slammed it shut during one of the only arguments I ever heard her raise her voice in. Inside, the velvet lining had faded from crimson to the color of aged Burgundy wine. Generation after generation had rested there, cradled like sleeping birds. The sapphire and diamond cluster brooch great-grandmother Beatrice wore on her wedding day in 1887, the day she married the blacksmith who would later cough himself to death of pneumonia when grandmother Lillian was only 4. The filigree gold earrings with seed pearls and rose-cut diamonds that my father gave my mother on their first wedding anniversary in 1952, she wore them every Sunday until the stroke took her speech and then, 6 months later, her breath. The single-strand pearl drop necklace my father purchased with the first substantial commission check he received as a young architect in 1958, the year he designed the small public library branch on Harrison Street that still stands. The delicate diamond tennis bracelet I bought for myself in the summer of 1981 with overtime money earned shelving books at the very same library, back when Vivian was still small enough to climb into my lap and fall asleep with her thumb in her mouth and my heartbeat under her ear. And the rose gold locket, hand-engraved with tiny ivy leaves climbing around the edge, the one Daniel fastened around my neck the morning of our wedding in June 1973. The same locket I removed only once, in the fluorescent hush of the oncology ward in November 1987, when the doctors said there was nothing left to try. These were never museum pieces. They were never intended to be investments. They were memory made solid. Weight I carried gladly. Proof that love had once existed in this bloodline, that it had left fingerprints. Vivian arrived late. I was 36, an age when most women had already raised a houseful of children. Daniel and I had almost given up hope. Then, in the middle of a sleet storm on March 17, 1979, she came, red-faced, furious at the cold, furious at the light, furious at everything. Daniel laughed until tears ran down his cheeks and called her our little firecracker. I simply called her Miracle. When Daniel died of pancreatic cancer at 49, Vivian was 12. She became my entire solar system overnight. The center around which every decision turned. I gave her everything. Everything I had. Everything I didn't. New winter coats when mine were patched at the elbows. Ballet lessons when I ate plain rice and canned peaches for weeks. Summer camp in Wisconsin when I worked double shifts at the library reference desk. College tuition at Northwestern that left my pension so thin the financial advisor actually winced when he ran the numbers. She graduated magna cum laude in marketing. Moved to Chicago. Landed a job at a boutique agency on Michigan Avenue. Married Marcus Whitlock in a ceremony at the Drake Hotel, ivory silk, 500 guests, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. I sat in the front row in a lavender dress I'd bought on clearance, watching my daughter glow like someone who had never known hunger. I was proud. So proud it hurt. But pride, I have learned, can be a slow poison when it is never returned. It began with small borrowings. Mom, can I borrow the pearl drops for the gala next month? They'd be perfect with the navy gown. Of course, darling. She returned them 3 weeks later, reeking faintly of someone else's perfume, something expensive, floral, aggressive. I said nothing. Then the filigree earrings. Just for the photo shoot, Mom. They look so vintage chic in pictures. Returned 6 months later. One post missing a tiny rose-cut diamond. It must have fallen out at the venue. I'm so sorry, Mom. I feel awful. I told myself it was an accident. Mothers tell themselves many gentle lies. Then the locket disappeared for 14 months. When I finally asked during one of her rare visits, she laughed lightly over the rim of her wineglass. Oh God, I completely forgot it was still in my jewelry case at the condo. I'll bring it next time, promise. She didn't. Piece by piece, the velvet grew emptier. I told myself she was young. Busy. Distracted. That she would return them when life slowed down. That she still understood what they meant. Then came the money. First it was a little help with the down payment on the condo in Lincoln Park. Then Marcus's year-end bonus got pushed to March. Then the wedding planner needs the final installment or they'll cancel the florist. Then the HOA fees are insane and the special assessment hit us hard. Then Marcus's car needs a new transmission and the warranty doesn't cover it. I wrote checks. I transferred funds from the savings account I'd built slowly over 30 years. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself she would look back one day and understand how much love had been folded into every zero. I was wrong. The afternoon the last thread snapped was ordinary in every way except the ending. October 12th. Gray sky so low it seemed to rest on the rooftops. I had decided, after 20 years of postponing, to attend the library's annual benefit gala. Nothing extravagant. Just a chance to wear something pretty, see old colleagues, remember who I had been before mother became my only title. I opened the jewelry box. Empty. Not one piece remained. The velvet looked obscene in its nakedness. My fingers hovered above the bare lining the way a person might touch a fresh wound to see if it still bled. I called her. Voicemail. I called again. She answered on the 5th ring. Music and bright laughter in the background. A restaurant. A celebration. Someone else's happiness. Mom? I'm at dinner. Can this wait? Where's my jewelry, Vivian? A pause. A sigh. The unmistakable sound of ice clinking against glass. Mom, come on. You never wear that stuff anymore. It was just sitting there collecting dust. You sold them. I sold a few. We had some unexpected expenses. Marcus's car needed a new transmission, and then there was this stupid tax thing with the business. You sold my mother's earrings. You sold my grandmother's sapphire brooch. You sold the locket I wore when I married your father. Her voice sharpened, the way it used to when she was 16 and caught in a lie. They're things, Mom. Old things. You've been hoarding them like some kind of museum curator. I needed the money more than those dusty relics needed to sit in a drawer forever. I felt something inside my chest fold neatly, then snap like dry kindling. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I simply said, very quietly, I see. And I hung up. For 3 days I moved through the house like a ghost who had forgotten how to leave. I touched the empty places on the dresser. I opened drawers I hadn't touched in decades. I found the insurance appraisal from 1997, typed on thick cream paper with the watermark still visible. I found the photographs I'd taken of every piece laid out on black velvet for documentation. I found tiny notes my mother had tucked inside the box over the years. Birth dates, wedding dates, little prayers written in her careful hand. I did not sleep much. On the 4th day I made a decision. I dressed carefully, my best navy wool coat, the one I'd bought for Daniel's funeral, low heels, a silk scarf the color of winter sky. I walked 6 blocks to the metro station in the cold October wind. I took the train into the city. I took a cab to Michigan Avenue. I had an appointment at Harlan and Weiss, one of the oldest auction houses in the Midwest. They specialized in estate jewelry. The appraiser was a thin man in his late 60s named Theodore Lang. Wire-rimmed glasses. Careful, almost reverent hands. A voice like old parchment. I laid out the photographs, the appraisal, the insurance documents, the handful of receipts and letters. He studied them for nearly 20 minutes without speaking. When he finally looked up, his eyes were soft behind the lenses. These are exceptional, Mrs. Mayfield. Truly. The sapphire cluster alone is museum quality. The provenance is impeccable, letters, photographs, original presentation cases for some. It's rare to see this level of documentation. I want to sell them, I said. All of them. Including any pieces that may have already entered the secondary market. He raised one eyebrow very slightly. Some of these may have been sold privately in the last few years. They could be anywhere, private collections, other auction houses, even overseas. I know. Find them. Buy them back if you have to. I'll pay the difference. He nodded slowly, the way one nods when a person has made up their mind beyond argument. May I ask why now, Mrs. Mayfield? I looked past him, through the tall windows where rain had begun to streak the glass in long silver threads. Because they were never hers to take. The auction was scheduled for the 2nd week of December. They titled it simply, Important Private Collection of Antique and Period Jewelry, the Mayfield Family Estate. The catalog arrived in a heavy cream envelope sealed with a wax disc. When I opened it, my breath caught like cloth on a nail. There they were. Every piece photographed in soft, reverent light against black velvet. The descriptions were meticulous, almost tender. Lot 14. Victorian sapphire and old European cut diamond cluster brooch, circa 1885, accompanied by original presentation case from Spink & Son, London. Estimate, $18,000 to $24,000. Lot 22, pair of late 19th century gold filigree earrings with seed pearls and rose-cut diamonds, French, circa 1890. Estimate, $9,500 to $12,000. Lot 37, rose gold locket, hand-engraved ivy motif, interior photograph compartment containing original wedding portrait, American, circa 1940s. Estimate, $4,200 to $6,000. I read every word twice. Then I closed the catalog and pressed it against my chest like a hymn book. The night of the auction I did not attend in person. I stayed home. I lit a single beeswax candle on the dining table. I poured a small glass of the Oloroso sherry Daniel used to keep for Christmas and birthdays. I opened my laptop and watched the live stream. The sale room was hushed, elegant. Women in understated evening gowns. Men in dark suits. The auctioneer's voice calm, measured, almost musical. The sapphire brooch opened at 12,000. It climbed steadily. 15. 18. 21. 25. A telephone bidder entered at 27. The room went still. The gavel fell at $28,000. I closed my eyes when the sound echoed through the speakers. The earrings went for $14,200. The pearl drops reached $11,800. The tennis bracelet, my own small, stubborn act of independence, brought $9,600. And the locket, my wedding locket, started at $3,000. It climbed slowly at first, then faster. 4. 5. 6. A woman in the third row lifted her paddle with quiet determination. $7,200. When the jewelry section concluded, the hammer had fallen on a total just shy of $194,000. After commission, buyer's premium, and taxes, I would clear approximately $168,000. It was not a fortune. But it was enough. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Enough to repair what had been slowly breaking for decades. Enough to do things I had never allowed myself to dream of. I did not cry that night. I smiled, small, private, almost secret. The kind of smile a woman gives herself when she finally understands she is allowed to exist. I spent the money carefully. Deliberately. Almost ceremonially. First, the house. New double-pane windows that actually kept out the winter wind. Hardwood floors refinished until they glowed like warm honey in the morning light. A sunroom built onto the back of the house. Floor-to-ceiling glass, white oak window frames, a small built-in bench upholstered in pale linen. A place where I could sit with coffee and watch snow fall, or leaves turn, or roses bloom, without shivering. Then clothes. Not ostentatious things. Quiet luxury. Cashmere sweaters in oatmeal, taupe, and soft charcoal. Silk blouses that moved like water against the skin. A long camel coat I tried on 3 times before I let myself buy it. Leather ankle boots that didn't pinch. A single strand of freshwater pearls, not to replace the ones my mother wore, but to remind myself that beauty can begin again. And finally, the cruise. 28 nights on the Mediterranean. Barcelona to Athens. Ports I had only ever seen in magazines: Marseille, Monte Carlo, Florence, Rome, Naples, Santorini, Mykonos, Rhodes. A small cabin with a balcony. No one to answer to. No one to explain myself to. Just me, the sea, and the slow turning of days. I left on January 5th. When I returned in early February, the house smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The sunroom windows caught the pale winter light like mirrors. I walked from room to room touching the new surfaces the way a blind person learns a place by feel. Vivian arrived 3 weeks later. She used her key. She always used her key without knocking. "Mom?" Her voice echoed in the newly open hallway. "I need to talk to you about." She stopped when she saw me. I was sitting in the sunroom. Camel coat draped over the back of the chair. Cream silk blouse. Hair freshly cut in a soft silver bob I'd finally allowed the colorist to give me. On the table beside me, a pot of Earl Grey, 2 cups, and the glossy auction catalog. She stared. I lifted the catalog and set it gently on the table in front of the chair opposite mine. "Have a seat, Vivian." She didn't move at first. Then she crossed the room slowly, as though the floorboards might crack beneath her. She sat. Her eyes flicked to the catalog. She recognized the cover immediately. "What is this?" "You know what it is." She opened it with trembling fingers. Pages rustled. Her face changed with every turn: confusion, realization, horror, grief. You sold them? Yes. All of them? Yes. She looked up, eyes bright with sudden tears. Those were mine. They were family heirlooms. You had no right. They were mine, Vivian. My mother's. My grandmother's. My own. You took them without permission. You sold some without permission. You mocked me for keeping them safe. So I sold them, with permission. Mine. She pressed her palms flat on the table as though to anchor herself. You don't understand. Marcus and we're struggling. The condo payment is killing us. The interest rate reset and I lifted one eyebrow. You were going to sell more of my wedding jewelry to pay your mortgage? She flinched. I leaned forward slightly. You treated them like trash, Vivian. Like disposable things you could liquidate whenever cash was needed. So I sold them like trash. To people who will treasure them. Who will give them new stories instead of letting them disappear into pawn shops and private drawers. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. You're punishing me. No. I'm releasing myself. Silence stretched between us, long, taut, painful. She looked around the sunroom. The clean lines. The new light. The quiet beauty that had been paid for with the pieces she had taken. You used the money on this? On me, I corrected gently. For the first time in 72 years, I used money on me. She stared at the catalog again. Her voice cracked. You could have given me something. Anything. I gave you everything, Vivian. For 35 years. I gave until there was nothing left to give but the last pieces of my past. And you took those too. She stood abruptly. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you thought I never would. She walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back. I hate you for this. I nodded once. I know. She left. The door closed softly. I sat there a long time afterward, watching the late afternoon light move across the new floorboards like slow water. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel guilty. I felt empty in the best possible way. Like a house after the last guest has left. Quiet. Mine. Months passed. Spring came. Then summer. I planted roses in the narrow front yard, Beatrice roses, the same deep pink my great-grandmother loved. I took a pottery class on Tuesday evenings at the community center. My hands learned to shape clay instead of holding other people's burdens. I started reading poetry again, Mary Oliver, Adrienne Rich, Lucille Clifton. The way I used to before life became a long list of things to do for other people. Vivian called twice. Once to yell. Once to cry. I listened both times. I did not apologize. I did not invite her over. Some bridges burn clean. Some smolder for years. Ours, I think, simply dissolved into ash so fine the wind took it away without ceremony. Last week I opened the jewelry box again. It is still empty. But beside it now sits a small velvet pouch containing a single new piece, a slim white gold band set with a single moonstone the color of winter sky at dawn. I bought it myself in Athens, from a tiny shop near the Plaka. The old jeweler smiled when he saw how carefully I turned it in the light. When I slip it on, it feels light. New. Unburdened by anyone else's story. I wear it every day. Because sometimes the most precious heirloom a woman can leave behind is the example that she finally chose herself. That is the story, dear listeners. A story about the moment a mother realizes that endless giving is not the same thing as love. A story about the day the last velvet slot finally emptied, and the woman who owned it finally filled her own life. What do you think? Was Eleanor too harsh? Was Vivian beyond redemption? Or is there a moment in every long-suffering life when the only moral thing left to do is to stop suffering? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family? Could you sell the past to buy your future? If this story touched something deep inside you, please leave a like. Subscribe if want more.